St. Anthony was no stranger to suffering persecutions and beatings, and all sorts of resistances in his. In his missionary life, he's no stranger to suffering, and he says, perhaps some of the most profound words about suffering in their Christian life. In today's first reading, he says, "We hold this treasure in earth, and vessels, that the surpassing power may be of God, and not from us." Comparing his body, his mortal flesh, to a cheap, fragile, and weak vessel, that is what he's simply doing, is he's beginning to speak to the Corinthians about the power of God to bring the power of God to live in us, in and through our weak mortal flesh, that is, his glory in our suffer. In Paul continues, he says, "We are afflicted in every way, but not constrained, perplexed, but not driven to despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroy," he says. This, always caring about in the body, the dying of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be manifested in our body. It's very easy for us, my brothers and sisters, to focus on ourselves and what's not going well in our heart. What's not going well in our body, but it's not going well in our relationships, and to be overwhelmed by the suffering that we have. So much so that we can become discouraged. We can fall into despair. We can begin to say, God, where are you? But I think what Paul is saying here is that we have this earth, and these earth and vessels of our bodies. But inside of that, we have treasure that the life of Jesus is alive at us. The disabled too, to persevere in all of the sufferings that we experience. And one of the great temptations in the Christian life is to stop praying in our suffering that when we suffer, where do we focus? We focus on ourselves and what we don't have, on the privation on the lap and the evil that we're experienced. But I believe the invitation is to focus on what Jesus is doing, to focus on the treasure that is within the vessel, that we have to focus on what his life is doing inside of us. It's very true that there are some Christians, when they experience suffering, they become very bitter. It's very difficult for some people to say, how could I ever be happy? How could it ever have joy, because this is happening in my life? Or this thing is not happen. And yet, there are other Christians who seem to thrive in the midst of suffering, that they have a certain joy. They have a certain recognition that the life of Jesus is being manifested in my body, that I'm caring about this. Paul says, the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus might be manifest. There seems to be a peace to some people when they suffer. The big difference, my brothers and sisters, is whether or not Christians bring their sufferings to Jesus and allowing them to be at work in them. So, what are the sufferings of your own life? Maybe you have sickness, maybe you have a separation with someone that you love, maybe there's a certain situation that seems hopeless and discouraged. My encouragement to you is to bring that to prayer every single day and to say, Jesus, how are you manifesting your life in and through this trial? What are you doing? How are you loving me in this? How are you providing for me in this? That is exactly what the saints do every single day. And if we can allow Jesus to end his life to be manifested through us, no matter how difficult that suffering is, then we will become like St. Paul. We'll become like saints, we'll become like St. Anthony, a paddle who was able to find God in every trial, or at least a lot of his trials in his life, he found God. Let's bring our suffering to Jesus and ask him to manifest his glory in and through them, so that we can be witnesses and the glory of Christ to everyone around us.